Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana li hadha wa ma kunna lanahtadiya al-awla an hadana Allah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khayri khalqi wa nura arsha afdal al-anbiya wal mursaleen habibina wa sayyidina wa sanadina wa shafi'ana wa maulana Abul Qasim Muhammad وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين أما بعد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, I would like to greet you all once more with the warmest of Islamic greetings, and that is none other than Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, for without His mercy and kindness, opportunities such as these would not be presented to us, where we as fellow Muslims gather amongst each other for one more night in this blessed month of Ramadan and engage in His remembrance, eager to becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and embracing His message stronger. Never before has there been more demand for people to appreciate the status of being a Muslim. Never has there been more demand for us to elevate ourselves. And therefore, during these times, especially during the pandemic, many people are in search of answers because they realize that their lives are at stake. They realize that many of their close ones will pass away during this pandemic. And they are trying to make sense of life. And how blessed are we that we have been granted this blessed Quran that has armed us with the tools to make sense of the happenings of life. And that has been my central theme throughout the entire lecture series thus far, is that we want to equip our brothers and sisters with the tools to make sense of life. And that's why we have been transitioning from topic to topic with a goal in mind to make sense of things. Because a lot of times people become disenchanted by the religion of Islam. They lose their faith in God. And this is not only in the religion of Islam. Many people may lose their faith in God in other religions as well, because their expectation is different from reality. As in, whenever we talk about morals, people find that the more morally correct they are, the more they try to do the right thing, the more they become tested, and the more they run into difficulty. So in your mind, many people have been conditioned to think that if you're a good person who upholds strong morals, then you will be rewarded. And in the world of moral philosophy, they call this moral desserts, where you get to have a nice ice cream sundae just because you're a good person. But reality gives us a nice reality check when it smacks us in the head and says, "Oh, you're trying to be nice? Oh, okay. Let's see how many people can take advantage of you until you break. Let's see how much we can test your patience. Let's see what we can do until you lose faith of God." And it has that ruthlessness to it as well. So, last night's topic, we were discussing the Surah 103 in the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Asr. And if you pay attention to the Surah, and if you've read it before, this Surah is giving you the blueprint and the criteria to become successful in the face of reality. And just a short recap for those that may have missed it. I did a short introduction of the Holy Quran. And the reason why I do that is because I have seen time and time again that people are not getting the answers they need from our spiritual circles, because they are being told things conceptually. They are being told things like, control your anger, be patient, read Quran. Those are very vague answers, and they are vague prescriptions to give to an individual, especially in the 21st century. And one of the things that I aspire to do is, for the time that Allah has given me the privilege to speak about this beautiful religion of Islam is to dive in not too much further because every individual is different, but to go a step beyond that and try and equip people with the tools to make use of these principles, such as reading the Quran. We discussed that, first of all, in our day and age, we are not Arab speakers natively. And even the Arab speakers that do speak Arabic at home don't speak the same dialect as the Holy Quran. So a lot of people resort to the English translation. The first thing that I aim to do is, from my years of research, from my years of um, looking for the best version of the Quran that is available to me, and I graded the best version of the Quran not only by the comprehensiveness of it and how well organized it is, and not by only by the English that's used, but I use it to see how much this translation and this commentary relied on the sayings of Ahlul Bayt to define terms in the Quran. And I found that this Quran, once again, I'm going to mention it again tonight. This Quran by Ayatollah Mirza Puya Yazdi, which is a 1988 publication. It's nothing new. We've had it on our shelves for a long time. This has been my best friend. In fact, this entire commentary of the Surah Al-Asr that I'm doing, I would say 70 to 80% of the information I derived was simply reading the preface before the actual surah. Because in the beginning of every surah, there is a description that indicates a lot of the secrets that Ahlul Bayt have taught their students about that specific surah. And it also goes through those terms such as Asr. I spent almost 10 minutes discussing Asr last night. In this book, in this version of the Quran, you get to have the Ahlul Bayt's interpretation to the best of Ayatollah Mirza Puya Yazdi's findings. And it may not be perfect, right? But it does give you the English platform to develop upon. Once you start getting into the actual books of tafsir of Ahlul Bayt, such as Tafsir al-Ayashi, Tafsir al-Nur al-Thaqalain, Tafsir al-Burhan, you might find more depth, but this is the perfect platform from my experience as your fellow brother that has been brought up in the West to start with this one. And I have the Amazon link. If anybody wants to reach out to Sister Fadek, I will gladly provide that to her. We also mentioned that when you are approaching the Quran, always start with the Meki verses. Why? Because the Meki surahs are the ones that are revealed in Mecca during the time the Prophet was introducing Islam. The Madani surahs are those super long surahs that have all of those different themes and prescriptions within it. And you'll notice the Madani surahs, because they're so long, it doesn't follow the typical flow of a Western academic or any kind of student, because we are taught one thing, that when you start a paragraph, you want to end with the beginning and end have to do with each other. And in the Quran, the beginning and end of any surah or chapter, you'll find you may end up in a completely different place. So what we want to do is we want to start with the simple things and the principles, and those are highlighted in the Mekki surahs. Surah Falaq, Surah Nas, Surah Ikhlas, the four quls, as we say, Surah Al-Kafirun, and tonight's topic, Surah Al-Asr. So those surahs will help you get a better handle on the Holy Quran. And so that's what we discussed. And now let's go to Surah Al-Asr. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal Asr. Very quick, we're going to glaze over this because I already spent a lot of time yesterday on it. Wal Asr. Asr means either time, pressure, or specific time. And the fourth meaning would be Imam Sahib al-Asri was Zaman. In fact, there is a lot of evidence that the Ahlul Bayt has taught us about this Holy Quran. And obviously the fourth meaning and the heaviest meaning and the most hidden meaning being that Asr means Imam Sahib al-Asri was Zaman Ajralallahu Ta'ala Faraja. This indicates that there are hidden layers of the Quran that only the Ahlul Bayt know, as they mentioned in Basa'ir Darajat, that book that I mentioned earlier. But there is also you can also draw a parallel from this, that the Ahlul Bayt say anytime Allah is swearing by something, that thing they're swearing by has a hidden layer to it that refers to one of the members of Ahlul Bayt. For example, والتين والزيتون وتور السنين وهذا البلد الأمين. In this situation, Allah is swearing by watin, the fig, والزيتون, وتور السنين, Mount Sinai, and the city. So Allah is swearing by four things: والتين والزيتون وتور السنين وهذا البلد الأمين. Do you know how many people have come to me with some sort of fake study that tells me that watin and was zaytun, the number of times Allah mentions it in the Quran, if an individual were to consume the number of time Allah mentions that ratio of figs and olives, then they will have beautiful skin for a very long time. And I don't know where they came up with these studies. And I actually have a health sciences background, so when I look at that study, it looks completely fake. It doesn't have any kind of evidence that would follow through. And when you make things up like this, you need to be careful. When you just pull up a scientific study, in the world of science that we live in today, brothers and sisters, there could be one scientific study that proves one thing, and there could be another scientific study that proves the complete opposite. That's why I think that science is a little overrated because they're always contradicting each other. One day you say, oh, hydroxychloroquine anti-malaria pills will help you with coronavirus. The next day they'll say, oh no, it'll actually kill you. One day they say Advil, ibuprofen is bad for coronavirus. The next day they'll say, oh no, ibuprofen is good for you. One day they'll say zinc is going to make the virus worse. The other one will say, and you see where I'm going with this, because there's so much confusion going on. And so for us to be arrogant enough to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reason why he is swearing by a fig and an olive is because he wants to give us beauty tips and how to make our faces look nicer is disrespectful. And it has also, you have also lost the meaning of those verses, because when we go to the school of Ahlul Bayt, Allah is not only swearing by a fig and olive, Mount Sinai, and a city. The school of Ahlul Bayt teaches us that teen is actually Imam al-Hassan, Zaytun is Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, the Mount Sinai is Imam Ali alayhi salam, and the city is referring to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alayhi. That's another tafsir on its own, but I'm just trying to show you that anytime Allah is swearing by something, it is not limited to that physical object or that relevant concept. So wal asr, if Allah is swearing by it, then no, there's a hidden meaning behind it that is referring to one of the members of the Ahlul Bayt and the Imams. In this surah specifically, wal asr, the ta'wil, the hidden meaning is it's referring to Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman Anjalallahu Ta'ala Faraja. And then he says, Innal insana lafi khusr. In this situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying the human being is at a loss. But not only is he saying human being, he is saying insan. And we discussed last night that there are three ways Allah will talk to us. The first one is a neutral way to talk to us, that one being bashar. If Allah is talking to us as bashar, it means that we are just ordinary human beings. He's talking about the life form, the human being. Insan is a negative way. It's a very angry way to talk to the human being, because insan comes from the Arabic terminology of nisyan, to forget or forgetful. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to us as beings that always forget. And the third way that he would mention us is Bani Adam, and Bani Adam is when he would be honoring us. For example, in the verse in the Quran, he says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا Bani Adam. So in this situation, is and we have honored the children of Adam. Anytime Allah refers to us as the offsprings of his prophet, it means he is talking to us in a positive format. In Surah Al-Asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by something very important. He's swearing by time, he's swearing by the pressure, he is swearing by Imam al-Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala faraja, that indeed these human beings that are constantly forgetting are at a loss. It's as though they are asleep, and every second they are sleeping, something is being taken away from them and they don't even realize it, except illa alladhina amanu. Then he says, the only people that are not at a loss in this situation are the ones that have Iman. What did we discuss in the past few nights with regards to the subject of Iman? That when I go to other Muslims and I try and ask them to explain what Iman is, a lot of times they resort to explaining to me what actions a person is supposed to fulfill. A person of Iman is not someone who fulfills actions, yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates this in Surah Hujurat, where he says, قالت الأعراب آمنا. The Arabs come and tell you that we have Iman. قل لا تؤمنوا ولكن, say you do not have Iman. لا تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا. Say that you have professed in Islam. You have Islam with you. Islam being that you said لا إله إلا الله ومحمد رسول الله صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. So say that you have just simply professed in Islam. You have not allowed yourself to elevate to the level of Iman or have become a mu'min, which is a carrier of Iman. And then he says, قولوا أسلمنا وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلُ إِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ, unless that iman has entered their hearts. And then we discussed several times that the sign of a believer, the sign of someone that has truly graduated from just simply saying La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah, is the individual that has accepted the authority of Imam Ali alayhi salam and loves Imam Ali alayhi salam. The person that has allowed Imam Ali to enter their heart truly. As Rasulullah puts it so beautifully, he says, Ya Ali, la yuhibbuka illa al-mu'min wa la yughdibuka illa al-munafiq. Ali, no one shall love you except that they have accepted Iman in their heart, that they are mu'min, and nobody shall hate you except that their heart is full of hypocrisy, meaning they look like Muslims, but within their heart it's full of fakeness and hypocrisy, that they have truly not accepted Iman. So Allah is saying, Wal asr, inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu. And the next verse is where we stopped last night. Wa amilus salihat, and that's what we were discussing. How do I know? So amilus salihat means righteous deeds, righteous deeds. And we discussed last night that very funny Christian story where a taxi driver who drives like a crazy person and makes people scared, and they, as a result, become believers of God, just simply asking God, "Oh God, please don't let me die in this stinky old taxi," as opposed to a preacher who spends his entirety of his life preaching for God, but not many people converted because he was a very boring speaker. We talked about in that Christian story that the taxi drivers seem to have a higher status than someone who dedicates their entire life for God. And that's not the case in Islam, because in Islam, every good that you do is counted regardless of the outcome. So in this story, the Christian story, we're seeing that the results are more important than the intention. In Islam, the intention is more important than the result. So even if you try your best and you don't get that outcome that you truly desire, and you are completely removed, in fact, it's encouraged that you remove yourself from the outcome, because the outcome is what leads to disappointment and disenchantment. So when you're doing something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your intention is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remove yourself from the outcome and um, give yourself that ease in your anxiety about how it's going to turn out. Because no, if you sincerely did it for Allah, then Allah will be very proud of you. He'll be very he'll reward you adequately. Don't have any worries about how it went. A very interesting story, not a very interesting hadith by Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is a very crucial hadith to pay attention to. He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes the sin of a man who causes him to repent and come back to him than the good deed of a person that makes him arrogant and forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, do not think that the good that you do gives you a sense of proudness, for without the mercy of Allah, you would not have been able to even be able to commit to that action. And that's why we always say, remove yourself from the outcome, whether it be good or bad. If you have an amazing outcome, you plan some sort of event for, let's say, Eid al-Ghadir, and many people show up and it's a success, don't try and become arrogant with that, for it was Allah's mercy and barakah that gave that event that fruition. It's a very circular concept when it comes to amilus salihat. Why? It's as if you're doing a test, and it's a multiple choice test, right? And you have some idea on which answer you want to do, and then the teacher is walking by, and then they kind of point to the right answer, and then they walk, and then they give you that little, like, here, I'm going to help you, you're a good student of mine, here, this is what you got to do. So they just kind of point to that right answer and quietly walk off. Well, in the same sense, when you have an intention to do something, for example, a program for Eid al-Ghadir, a program for Ramadan, you already have some idea of what the right answer is, and when the outcome is great, it's as if Allah is the teacher and he has kind of pointed to that right answer. He has given you all the means to fulfill that thing of good intention. So always do not forget that the ultimate reason you are doing something is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another piece of advice that I once got from a fellow mu'min, a very good individual. One time I was sitting with him, and I was talking about one time I did a business transaction with another Shia, and obviously I got the not obviously, but unfortunately, I got the shorter end of the stick in the transaction. I wasn't too happy. And, the person asked me, why did you do it? I said, you know what? I honestly thought he was my brother and he wouldn't wrong me. And so he told me, Hadi, when you made that intention, it was because you understood that this person was a lover of Ahlul Bayt, and, and you had good intentions with doing business with this man. You didn't know what the outcome was going to be. So don't talk bad about him. Don't gossip about him, because that's what we do with when we get angry. We get really, really angry. This guy ripped me off. I need to, let it out. It's like therapeutic almost. But he said, don't do that. Go tell Imam Zaman, go tell Imam al-Mahdi, Ajlallahu ta'ala faraj, Imam, I came and I did business with this person because I thought, and I hope he still is, a representative of you, or I was hoping that he was a lover of you, and that's the reason why I did this. So Imam Zaman, you fix it. I came with this intention. I trusted him because I knew he also loved you as well, and I didn't get that that I want. So I actually did that, and I kind of internalized a lot of the. It's painful to feel that you got ripped off. I internalized it for quite a bit, and finally, a few months later, I got my end of the bargain. Basically, I got the somehow it happened, but for some reason I got my the investment back. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. So this is what we have to understand, that even when you have good intentions, sometimes it may not be a good outcome, but always try and remove yourself from the outcome and focus on the intention. So wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and the one that defends and speaks the truth. What truth is that, brothers and sisters? It's very easy today to convince someone that Islam is a religion of oneness of God and principles, etc. But within the religion of Islam, how difficult has it been? How hard has it been to simply accept the authority of Imam Ali alayhi salam? أما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم هم فيه مختلفون. And they ask you of the great news. What great news is that? Amir al-Mu'mineen. هم فيه مختلفون, the one that they have quarrel and disagreement about. This greatest news of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the authority of Amir al-Mu'mineen, being that it happened on the day of Ghadir. Now listen to what Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says about this day. He says, if there is an individual out there who has something of his stolen, and the victim has two witnesses to indicate that the individual that stole his object is indeed that person that did, and he goes and presents these two witnesses to a judge, then the judge must go ahead and ordain that that thing be returned to him. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, what can we say about the man whom on the day of Ghadir there was over 12,000 witnesses, where the Holy Prophet grabs his hand, raises it, and says, Man kuntu mawla, fahada aliyun mawla. For whoever's authority I am, Ali is also his authority. What can we say about the one that had 12,000 witnesses, and upon the Prophet's death, that right would be taken from him? Oh, Shia, Imam Sadiq says, know that there is no greater truth and there is no greater haqq to be returned than the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'min, than the authority of Imam Ali alayhi salam on the day of Ghadir, which was unrightfully taken from us. It was unrightfully taken in terms of the position, but not in terms of status in the eyes of Allah. For they always remained Imam. But what they did is they did not do dhulm. They did not do oppression to the Imam, brothers and sisters. They did dhulm. They did oppression to the people, to their followers, and to the 1400 years that would go by where people will be misled by what true leadership in Islam would be. They hurt so many people because of this. In fact, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam says in Sheikh Baqir Najat's lecture, he mentioned that had you have accepted the authority of my father, then there would be no man in the entire Muslim community that would be quarreling and complaining about injustice. One individual that I truly, truly can say I look up to, that I cannot begin to understand how this man found this much love for Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. I cannot imagine, I don't know what his mother did to him to give him this kind of motivation at the time that he was. And normally, if you notice, I try to not mention scholarly opinion. I try to focus on Quran, Ahlul Bayt, Holy Prophet, and just remain in those hemispheres. I try not to go to scholarly opinion because, first of all, there's too many scholarly opinions. But there is one scholar, and I'm not going to talk about his opinion. I'm just going to talk about his actions, which I have yet to see any contemporary scholar rival him on. And that scholar is Allama Amini. Never have I seen an individual like Allama Amini. And this person is a person who gets up one day, he's a scholar. He gets up one day and he goes on in the 1900s, early 1900s, and he goes on a 20-year mission to compile every single narration that had to do with the appointment of Imam Ali's authority on the day of Ghadir. Guess what he names his book? Al-Ghadir. He names his book Al-Ghadir. He goes to every single place you can imagine that had scholarship at his time. He went to Saudi Arabia, he went to India, and he would go into their libraries. And sometimes they would say, "We don't want you to enter our libraries because we know what you're doing. We know what you're looking for." And what he was doing is he was going into the most staunch Sunni sources, the people that would reject Imam Ali's entire authority as a whole, but he would later go on to find narrations from those very people in their own books that indicate that the day of Ghadir did happen. He goes and he compiles it for 20 years. His students even asked him once, they said, "How did you survive in India? Like, it was so hot." And Allama Amini was famously responds by saying, "Was India hot? I didn't notice." That's how entrenched Allama Amini was in going ahead and compiling this book called Al-Ghadir. And for me as an academic, the reason why I find this so profound is because I would go on to study and I would see that prior to this book of Al-Ghadir, every single renowned Ahl Sunnah theologian or scholar would say that Day of Ghadir didn't happen. Shias are crazy. They keep thinking this day happened. It didn't happen. And it wasn't until Allama Amini, rahmatullahu alayh, went ahead with this book that even the scholars of Saudi Arabia at the time, they said, "Our hats off to you, Allama Amini. You have made a book where we cannot even begin to deny the validity of it because you have all of our renowned narrators and you have all of our scholars that have deemed this sahih, that have gone overlooked for ages." And Allama Amini goes ahead in the 20th century, bro. This is a century ago. This is not that far along. This is 1300 years after the aftermath, and he goes and he does it with no internet, no crazy forms of transportation. He goes to India, he goes to Saudi Arabia, he goes all around the world looking for the traditions manually by sifting through pages, and then he discovers these hadith. He compiles it in his book, and he presents it to the Sunni ulama. Subhanallah. How can anybody, even this is not a fairy tale. This is exactly, the book is still available. It's been translated. Phenomenal book, phenomenal book. I encourage every single Shia of this day and age to go and look for Allama Amini's book, Al-Ghadir. وَتَوَاصُوا بِالْحَقِّ, and the one that speaks the truth and runs after the truth. Now, brothers and sisters, we probably don't have the means to become Allama Amini nowadays. We don't. We've dedicated ourselves to this society, and not to say that we can't do it, but most of the greatest works have already been compiled. But we can share his work. We can talk about it. We can be not okay with people spreading lies, and that when you do that, pay attention to the next verse that comes after it to conclude. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and indeed have patience. So once again, to recap, wal asr, by time, by pressure, by the time of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. The human being that constantly forgets is at a loss, except the one that has iman in the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, except for him. And the one who carries out righteous actions with no strings attached between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one that speaks and runs after the truth and does not take falsehood. And finally, the one that exhibits. From these four criteria, if you want to be successful, Allah is giving you a blueprint here. That if you do not have iman, if you do not do righteous actions, if you do not speak the truth and run after the truth, and if you do not have patience, if either one of these goes missing, then the whole blueprint, the whole structure that you're building on falls apart. But brothers and sisters, let me tell you, patience is perhaps the hardest one to carry out. It is the hardest one to carry out. Why? Because you will always get stuck in this position where you will ask yourself, should I respond? Should I do something? Or should I stay patient? Imam Ali alayhi salam says, "O people, be it known that if you remain patient, the path to success is guaranteed, but it may take a little longer." And this stretch of things taking a little longer is that stretch where people are tested. It's that stretch where people lose faith because they're like, I'm doing everything right, but some bad things keep happening, and I don't know how much longer I could stay patient before losing it. On a second level, if there's an individual that carries out those 3 out of the 4 actions, but they don't have patience, then it's as if they have rendered the other 3 useless. Why? Because have you ever heard of a person going, this brother is a very nice brother, or this sister is a very nice sister. Their only problem is that they have anger problems. If the slightest thing you do sets them off, then they have it. Is this person a person of reputation? Is this someone that you want to go learn from, someone with anger problems? Or is it someone that you go around them and you're always worried what's going to set them off? What's going to make them angry? So this individual automatically has disqualified themselves and is now at a loss, as Allah says, "Innal insana lafi khusr," because he has not exhibited any form of sabr. And then you ask yourself, okay, well, now I'm at a crossroads. Because for example, when I go into my workplace, there are individuals that are looking to take away my right. Do I stay silent and passive, or do I become an aggressor and try and take my right? Now, what you'll notice, this is where the whole patience and anger comes in. This is where I want to help coach some of the youth with what to do. Every situation is different, and therefore you need to use your brain a little bit, pick your battles. Indeed, patience is the right way to go, but that does not mean you become passive. That does not mean that you're okay with anything that people do. For example, one situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises us to be patient, but become passive. In this situation, Allah always tells us what? He says, and when your parents become of old age and they become difficult to be around, remain patient. That is the only position I've seen in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, against your better judgment, to respond back to your parents, or they've become senile, or they've become difficult to deal with. Do not lose your patience, brothers and sisters, when it comes to your parents. And then Allah says, and do not say oof to them. Do not raise your voice and do not say oof. And they asked the Prophet, what does oof mean? He said that is the slightest form of disrespect that could come out of your mouth. Allah mentions the word oof. It's the slightest. Oof. Do not even say that to them. So Allah is ordering on this occasion complete and utter passivity. Don't even think you know better for a second. For when you were young, that parent took care of you. And when you needed help and when you made all kinds of mistakes, that parent of yours remained patient with you. Now it's time to flip the bill. Now try and see if you can stay patient when your parents become difficult because of the old age that they have. So that's one level. But the other part is, brothers and sisters, just because Allah says stay patient does not mean that you do not assert your rights. There are certain things, especially for the brothers, when it comes to certain parts in life, you should not be okay with anybody taking your right. Do not become angry and lose your mind. But there are methods where you can communicate. And by the way, communication is an art that we should all attempt to master. There are ways to communicate without insulting, without getting angry, where you can retrieve your right. For the man of the household, brothers, you have to really work on this assertiveness. The man of the household is the one that protects his household. And just because you are patient does not mean that you allow anyone to take advantage of your household, because it is your divine duty to make sure that household is protected. That's why they encourage, the art of self-defense. Make sure to be able to defend yourself in battle, not necessarily take thousands of punches and say, look what a patient person I am. Defend yourself in battle, but do not be the aggressor. If you are at work and you feel that there's something happening, try and report it. Try and diffuse the situation at first. If it's getting bad, if it's becoming racist, insulting, go and report it. Be assertive. Take your rights. You know your rights. Learn your rights. Go and take them. So that is the level that of patience. That is how crucial patience is. And this is the blueprint for a successful believer, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Ahzab. One last story that I want to share with you before I conclude and give the mic off to Sheikh Baqir Najad. I know my time is almost done. I remember back in, this is a very anecdotal story, but it's a very interesting story because anytime I've noticed that I do something wrong, I feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala smacks me in the head, metaphorically, right away, and I get the punishment right away. And this is me growing up. And anytime I try to be patient, I see the opposite happen to the person that was harassing me. So in 2015, I was invited to speak in New York City at a local mosque, and the mosque was divided into several different sections. I'm just going to conclude really fast. I know Sheikh Baqir Najat's waiting. The mosque was separated into 5 different sections, and the Jama'ah Salat every night would be held in the Pakistani section. So I would go and pray every night, and then I would wait for one of the members of the mosque that I was staying with to take me down to the appropriate level of the center. I was speaking for the Afghani center in that big mosque. And so I was waiting. I had finished my salat and they were doing the dua. I was waiting and I saw this little bench area, and there was a pillow in the middle of the bench, just a random pillow sitting, and there's all this other empty space. So I went ahead and I started leaning on this because I was just waiting, casually waiting for someone to come take me to the right destination. And all of a sudden, I see a Pakistani man, like he's looking at me from down the hallway, and you can see the anger is coming out of his ears. You can see the steam coming out of his ears, and he's doing this to me, like, And so I'm thinking, what did I do? And he comes at least maybe 5 feet away from me, and at that point, he's like, he starts yelling. He says, "Don't you understand that this bench is what we do for Marcia? We recite Marcia on this, and they sit and I was just leaning on it. I didn't know I was disrespecting the entire mosque by leaning on it. But so as he's yelling at me, there's all kinds of things happening in my head, going, "Excuse me, I'm the speaker downstairs in the Afghan. You're talking to me like, those are the impulses that any human being naturally would have. But in that moment, and there's been plenty of these moments in my life, by the way, in that moment, I got off from this bench and I sat down right next to the bench, maybe not even a foot away. And so the guy is still yelling at me and I didn't say anything. I just nodded. And he kind of felt bad. So he's like, yes, please, like, don't do it again. And then he walked off. And he made a big scene out of it. And so 2 days later, I was invited to come and speak for the school they had in that mosque 2 days later. And so I was standing there and they're giving introductions. And the person that's giving the introductions is the same guy that yelled at me 2 nights before, not knowing that I was one of the guests at the mosque. So he takes a paper out. Okay, Hajj Hadi studied this many years. He went to this. Please welcome Hajj Hadi with a loud salawat. So now you should have seen his face when I was the one that got up after he gave this really nice description of me. And so he looked devastated, obviously, because at the same time, I was a guest at his mosque, and on top of that, I was someone that was going to be presenting there, so he felt really bad. And I didn't say anything to him. I finished my presentation. He saw me present for the first time, And afterwards, the night after I came to the mosque, he's like, "Oh, brother, I was looking for you." He grabbed me by the wrist. He took me to the vice president of the mosque and he said, "Listen, we need to invite this guy for R-Rahim right now." Same person that yelled at me 2 days ago for leaning on a bench is now inviting me to his center. Because, brothers and sisters, in this moment, we have a choice. We have a choice to get angry as well because we feel that this person is disrespecting us. And when we feel disrespected, we feel something's being taken away from us. Or we can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enact on it. And in that moment, I thought to myself that, you know what? I'm not saying I'm a spirit. There are plenty of times that I may have lost my patience. But in this moment, I just wanted to highlight that many times when you stay patient, Imam Ali says what? It may take longer, but success is always guaranteed. With that being said, I won't take up any more of your precious time tonight. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.